I want to talk to you a little bit about this book, Blind Curves. It started out being called Rome, and that didn't really work very well. I filled up at least 14 notebooks before I found Blind Curves, and I don't remember how I did it. In doing it, I wanted to write a good story. I took every college course, every graduate course, by who didn't make me write, by who would let me just talk. I hated to write, and I needed to write a book. So I went to Maui Writer Conferences, I hired book coaches, I did a variety of different things. And along the way, I've rewritten this book. I've written 10 books. You have one book. There are 9 more books that are somewhere else. But what you learn when you write a book, how many people here, just to see a show of hands, how many of you were ever told you should write a book? I now have friends saying, I know why I'll never do it. I watched you. But one of the things that happened as in these seminars is I came back and would throw out a third of everything I've written. You write the first book for yourself. You have all the cute little stories about your grandmother and different things, and then you say, what does the reader need to hear? And you start to throw things out. I throw it out and throw it out. So something I want to tell you about the book tonight is when you read it, is I was so excited on the motorcycle road trip that we went on. It was 10 days. One of the nights, at the end of the night, we stopped at a roadside inn, a hotel. It was supposed to be on the Pacific, and guess what? It was on the Pacific Ocean. It was in Oregon. And we got off the motorcycle, and one of these twice a year sunsets came with oranges and reds and all things. And I wrote all about that sunset, and I was so excited. And unfortunately, I had a friend living in my house who was needing a place to live for 3 months, who is a Columbia Graduate School of Journalism. And she said, Linda, everybody talks about sunsets being orange, red, pink, beautiful, whatever. So what? That's like saying fireworks are spectacular. Tell me what a motorcyclist sees when they look at a sunset. That's the only way you can put it in your book. And I thought to myself, and so I wrote, when you get to that chapter, after a day long of studying the highway, of grays, blacks, taupe, looking for fluid, watching out for gravel. I wasn't looking at the scenery. I was still learning how to ride. When I walked into my hotel room that night and saw red and orange and pink light streams coming across the room, I inhaled it like a scuba diver who had been down too long. Immediately I tore off my heavy leather, threw on my play clothes, and ran out to the ocean to bathe in the sunlight, in the moonlight. That is what I learned. You talk about a sunset if you're on a motorcycle. Another place in this, I have to take a look at my notes because I wrote this 5 minutes before I came, which anybody who knows me understands that, is there was a place where we came, we got to the redwood forest, and oh my God, aren't the redwood forests absolutely marvelous? They're magical. And we decided, taking a look at the map, a lot of the parks are very isolated from each other because they forested all the major, easy to get areas. And so there's just little parks other than Yosemite and some of the big ones left over. We were in a little park. And there wasn't even anybody at the front gate when we came in. And when we came in and saw these redwoods, and we saw that there was a 35-mile loop around the park. Well, guess what we thought? 31 miles, and nobody was in this park. It started out as a 2-lane highway. Soon it went to a 1-way highway that was 1 lane, and eventually it deteriorated down to gravel and hard-packed dirt. Well, if you've been like me, and I've only been on a motorcycle for almost 30 days, this is pretty scary stuff. And we still haven't made it to the end of the loop, and we're going around blind curves and all sorts of things, but it was just us. But the road keeps getting smaller and smaller and more primitive. And we're looking down at our odometers, and it said it was a 30-mile loop. We're now at 35 miles. We're looking at each other, and you can't talk when you're on a motorcycle. It's too noisy. But we looked at each other. We're all pointing at it, going, But there was no turnoff. There was no telephone pole. We didn't see a house. We didn't see another person. We were in absolute wilderness. We come around a curve, and suddenly we're down to a very skinny farmer's lane going, oh my God, because we can't turn around. This was one way, going around blind curves. You can't turn around and go back 30 miles. Plus, you wish you could do the entrance, right? We get there, and suddenly we see that it does a bunch of these switchbacks forward, going back and forth, that has been washed out because of rains, with gravel and stone, to the top. And we get there, and we're sitting there looking at it. And we had a rule before we started this trip. Linda does not do gravel. You know about these rules that we make in life that we think are going to work? So I was down there, and I was looking and whatnot. And at that moment, Ron, one of our story, takes off, and he takes the hill to show us that it can be done. But even he, as you go back, switchbacks to the top of the mountain, they get tighter and more steep. Even around the last one, he struggled a bit. Now, Eva and I are looking at each other. She's the other woman on this trip with me. We're looking at each other and going, and we both know we've taken care of each other. She's taken care of me more than I've taken care of her. Come on. She's ridden thousands of miles. We look at each other going, who's going to take? Are we going to do the hill? So we have two bad decisions. You ever had that happen to you in life? We can try to take this hill, maybe wipe out, get hurt. There's no medical help. Motorcycle gets hurt, none of us know how to fix a motorcycle. Or we can turn around and face a traffic violation, going the wrong way on a one-way street. So what do? And that's the kind of dilemma, I think, that makes memoirs interesting, is when you get to that place in life that you say, what do? Well, I took one look, and if you know me, sometimes I get tired. I analyze things to death. My friends know this. But every once in a while, I get so tired of analyzing. I flip a coin, I said in the book, and I didn't wait to see which way I came down, and I took off up that hill. I just wanted to get out of there. So in my book, when I wrote the trip up that hill in 2 paragraphs. And then talked about the celebration of the top because we made it. I went to a writer's workshop with James Rowlands. Do you know him? He's a New York Times bestseller. And he said, Linda, this isn't good enough. He said, we can make the door opening to a house in creaking. We can make that last 10 minutes. We can make it last 4 pages. You gave me up the hill in 2 paragraphs. So that's why I took the trapeze class. He said, tell me the fear you felt. Tell me what you were feeling. And I said, I don't remember right now. So I thought, what am I most afraid of in life? Heights. So I took a 5-day trapeze course, and I won't tell you how much I swear to myself each morning as I got up, and each time I climbed up, and I would sit there at night and talk about what does it feel like, what does Linda feel like when she's afraid? Because that's what the book deserved, so I put it back in. So it's been a journey of learning how to write and how to make a better book. I did promise, though, that the last thing, and I want to talk about the book for a moment, is I was told on very often, we often write a story from the beginning to the end. And another workshop I went to, he said to me immediately, start where it's exciting. You have to capture your audience in that first paragraph, or they'll put it down. Start where it's exciting. I said, well, the exciting part is when I walked into the Harley-Davidson. But what about all that backstory? Well, you know, that trash can we talk about? And then you learn how to write reflection back, and learn when you can reflect back and tell people the backstory. So let me read to you, if you haven't already read, and the trouble with reading for me means I have to actually read the words and I can't ad-lib. But let me read to you the first 2 pages and see if I could catch your attention. After 2 difficult years, I was tired of sympathetic voices, puppy dog looks, and an environment filled with reminders to walk gently and pamper myself. Instead, I craved thundering noise, the thrill of speed. I wanted icy air whipping against my face, making me know I was alive. I wanted crescendo. I wanted bravado, to drown my screams and tears behind the roar of a large, powerful motorcycle. Opening the heavy glass door and stepping into the Harley dealership, I entered an unexplored world. Confronted by hundreds of shiny motorcycles laden with chrome and leather, covered with colorful graphics and logo, I felt my courage falter. My light-hearted fantasy evaporated as the realities of my impulsive decision started to settle in. Until a month ago, I had never dreamed of riding a motorcycle. I didn't have a husband, family, or even friends who rode. At 57, I was at the age where many of my friends were scaling down their physical activities as they edged towards retirement. There are many acceptable activities for a widow, but learning to ride a motorcycle wasn't on anyone's list, even at the very bottom, if such a list exists. Motorcycles are designed to appear fast, flashy, and intimidating, and it was working. My normally rapid gait slowed and then faltered as I surveyed row after row of gleaming bodies clustered around the showroom floor. Viewed from inside my Dodge Caravan, motorcycles had always seemed more like overgrown bicycle toys. Now up close, they looked huge, expensive, and complicated. The one elevated in the center of the floor, painted with neon yellow with orange flames flaring from front to back, was loaded with a multitude of switches, indicators, dials, gears, buttons, lights, pedals, knobs, and levers. My stomach muscles tightened as a panicked voice inside me cried, "How am I supposed to learn to ride this in just 3 days?" Wanting to divert my attention away from this emotional outburst, I glanced at my watch, reminding myself, class starts in 3 minutes, and I don't want to be late. I had barely convinced myself to continue walking forward when I passed the clothing section, stacked with helmets and boots and shirts and gloves, and racks of black leather. Nothing here looked like the Fonz's simple black leather back from the 1960s TV show. Nothing here remotely resembled anything I had hanging in my closets at home. I stared at a black t-shirt with metallic skull laughing down at me. Another displayed a profile of a busty woman that would have made a Barbie blush. What was I thinking? I could never wear a shirt mocking death, and certainly I wasn't ready to be a sex object. And what about all my 1960s feminist protests? Am I supposed to violate all of my values for this? My attempts to slow down my racing heart were futile as I processed the sounds of engines revving, tools clanking, and men shouting from the service at the back, all mixed with frenetic hard rock music blaring from the speakers overhead. My heart pounded even louder, wanting to be heard. In 2 minutes, my rebellious plan, a delicious fantasy that I could use to shock others, shattered. Now I was the person being shocked.